all for joining us. Coming from different cultures, different countries, sparing the time from your busy schedules, staying away from your families, and most importantly, giving yourselves to us, as speakers, as delegates, as participants, and as friends. On behalf of the Observer Research Foundation and ORF America, let me thank you again for your generosity. Let me paraphrase Steve Jobs: stay hungry, stay curious, but most importantly, stay engaged and keep in touch. To cap this wonderful discussion, we are delighted that we are joined by a special speaker this evening. Let me now invite our president, Dr. Samir Saran, the chair of the Kigali Global Dialogue, to introduce our next speaker.
I am delighted to welcome the next speaker to address us, and for a number of reasons. The first, of course, she's been an inspiration and, in fact, a driving force behind us being here the second time around. In fact, the original dialogue had a presence and a stewardship that took us to that particular edition, and this one, it was because of her we came back. And in fact, she had come to Delhi and participated in the Raisina dialogue. She was present in a number of important conversations and brought in a very unique perspective to that particular conversation hosted in New Delhi. Dr. Usta Katesi doesn't require any introduction, but she's someone who is changing the way we imagine governance. And I have no hesitation in saying that perhaps beyond all the innovations and beyond all the technologies that may be produced out of this beautiful country, there is a governance offering that the world should pay attention to. It's the innovation on how things are done, how you engage with people, how you bring more people into the design process, and how you respond to the multi-layered challenges, some of which we have engaged with during these 2.5 days into governance decision-making. So indeed, it is apt that the final word at this particular dialogue belongs to Dr. Usta. Dr. Usta, the mic is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Samir. I almost felt like somebody else was being introduced, but I'm humbled. Thank you very much. I also want to speak like the rest. Thank you very much for coming to Kigali, for bringing this wonderful dialogue to Kigali. And I hope you enjoyed your stay, and I hope you'll come back. Now, I was reflecting on a few things, and I'm going to use just a few examples on how innovatively we have engaged. And the last 2.5 days have really been that. Speaking about the hardest of things, each of us bringing our ideas and also sharing the knowledge, but also the innovations that we have had. And I'll just reflect on those. You know, why do we speak about the women's problem as though it's not a humanity issue? What went wrong? When did it go wrong? And I think this dialogue really represents that. When we start asking ourselves why we are in the current situation, Einstein said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. I want to challenge us as we end this dialogue. What are we doing? Are we trying to do the same thing over and over again? Do you think we are going to have different results? And Rwanda, that I know much better, if I had been asked the question, I wouldn't answer the question of wanting to be the president, but I would answer the reason why I would want the next president. And the reasons why I would want whoever becomes my president is when they think about inclusion instead of exclusion. And inclusion embeds a lot of things. Inclusion in design, inclusion in terms of understanding, and inclusion in terms of finding solutions. The Constitution of the Republic of Rwanda, Article 48, puts two very interesting responsibilities. One is the responsibility on the government to create an environment that allows participation and engagement. But the second is a responsibility on every citizen to participate in the development of the country. And that participation, I once had an interesting discussion of one of the founders of the leadership of this country, And he said that their political orientation was the demystification of intellectual arrogancy. And the demystification of intellectual arrogance is not to abuse those of us who have taken time to be in school. Instead, it's the understanding that each of us has a contribution to make. And when I was thinking about that, many of you who traveled to Kigali is the pilot. Did you realize that the absence of the people who we have never known what they do every day, who load our luggages on the plane and ensure that we arrive at the same destination at the same time with our luggages? Only now that they are not there, we recognize them. What a shame that we recognize the importance of people in their absence. But we have never, ever really took the time to understand that there is all of that manpower in the process and in the success of our traveling. And I think this dialogue really has questioned that. How much do we bring the citizens on the table from the design? We do not think that, and the beauty of this dialogue is that we have academics, we have policy makers, and we have also the civil society, or even those representing the civil society. So the power of togetherness brings me here. Inclusion is at the center of the power of togetherness. And how do we get together? By intentionally understanding that either we succeed together or we fail together. For a very long time, some people thought they would succeed alone, and today we are at a stage where we cannot succeed alone. And the intention of that, many of those who are Christians or who are not Christians will excuse me, and I will use this example of the myth, the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel is a myth in the Bible, in the Genesis, and it's a tower that was constructed. The myth goes, the tower was constructed by people who chose to get together and build a tower and reach to God. And God thought he was being compromised. And that is the story, they say, why we speak different languages. And through the Tower of Babel, God thought these people are going to come and challenge me. And he introduced the different languages. I wish I could ask everyone who is in this room to speak their language and see if we could hear one another. The story is they were not able to attain the purpose they had intended just because they were not able to be together. This country that we are in knows the pain of the lack of togetherness. If we cannot collectively, intentionally speak about the things that threaten us, if we cannot intentionally choose to implement in a way that includes us, we will definitely perish. We might perish at different levels, at different times, but eventually climate change is going to destroy all of us. And of course, when God created, as per the story, the languages, they did not lack anything except understanding one another. And that's why I like the name dialogue. The opportunity that we can listen to one another, the opportunity that we can hear the challenges that we go through. And I will use also this other thing that I learned only last year. So I went with colleagues to one of the hotels in the countryside, and when I went to the washroom, they didn't have the hangers for my handbag. And I came out really annoyed that they were not gender sensitive because we didn't have anywhere to hang our bags. Before I said it was a problem, a gender problem, my male colleagues said, "Oh, that's a problem. We can't find where to hang our coats either." I never knew that men had to hang coats in the bathroom, just because we never spoke about that as a problem. So the beauty of dialogue is how much we speak about the things that challenge us. I know so many of my sisters might never have known that men need that, actually. But until you speak about it together, you realize and understand one another's needs. If we do not speak about the challenges that we go through, if we do not engage, if we do not realize that We need one another to go together. And I like what she said, do not educate women and leave alone the men. Because we all need each other and we need to bring our collective effort together. So if we address the challenges that we have, address them together, address them collectively, and be aware of the context. If we are aware of our context and appreciate that they might differ, but as long as everyone is addressing the issues in a way that leads us to the directions that promote sustainable development, then we are in the right direction. I want to challenge ourselves to think about the real challenges that there is. You know, when we had to reconstruct this country, the inclusiveness that comes in, and I'll share only two instances that I bring as an element that is key, and he said governance is central. I raised the issue of participation and inclusiveness, but citizen participation is core. Any development approach that does not put a citizen at the center, any technology that we apply that excludes individuals and citizens is not going to be sustainable. We had a discussion so many times, but I think at some point we should stop being just the commodity and be the beneficiaries of the commodity that we are enjoying. So I want to just go back and say why Rwanda has chosen itself to be intentionally a hub for investment, a technology hub, and it responds to some of the challenges that were raised in this meeting. The challenges that face women, the challenges that face us in different places of the world, geographically and unfairly, and the challenges that, that we have gone through from a political history. The continent has been divided in a way that it has been divided in the absence of Africa. Do you think we can now win the war of redesigning the continent beyond the borders? That would be an endless war. But I think we have opportunities. The world has developed over and over again. We cannot, as a continent, overstay on the problems and the way they were created. I think the opportunity now is lamentations. I will go back to the element of how do you move forward beyond challenge, and I think that's what Rwanda did. In the year 2001, we got a new national anthem. Signing of the national anthem, I like to use this story. It was a competition. They threw out two envelopes, one with a technical offer and a very small envelope with the identity of those who are proposing our new anthem. And I should tell you that the anthem that we have today was written by three gentlemen who were in detention because of genocide, of the genocide against Tutsi. Why were we able to to get the opportunity of a very beautiful national anthem? It's because labor as a country to see who has introduced the anthem. Then they were only able to realize that the anthem was written by prisoners when they had already appreciated the technical offer. And then they realized, oh, these are people from this particular prison who took the time and dreamt of a Rwanda despite of what they had done or experienced before. And I think we need to think like that as well. We need to think that what offers do we have and how can we make it? And I think I'll move towards the end, and this is what I will say. As we move beyond Kigali, I want you to know that Kigali is not for Rwanda only. Rwanda is, my president has said, Rwanda is Africa in some place, in a particular place. I should say Rwanda is the globe in a particular place. So while I bear the passport of this country, you have every right to belong to this country because this is where humanity belongs. This is where we are supposed to be belonging. And the barriers that we've gone through as nations is very strong. Very important on governance is the will of the leadership is at the center. In this country, women enjoy political rights because there was a political will to include women. We didn't have any women in parliament. By 1994, we had never had more than 10% of women in parliament. But when we voted when we went to Beijing and made commitments, and when we voted the new constitution, the numbers moved to 40 to now 61. There needs to be a political will and an implementation commitment. The commitment of all of us to ensure that our commitments are being put in place is core. And I hope that this dialogue and more have generated the impulse in us to understand that we can only succeed if we do it together. We can only succeed if we believe that everyone has something to bring on the table. We can only succeed if we understand the context. And most importantly, we are not learning a lot of things from Africa, but we should learn one thing. There are certain things that have not worked to deliver. Exclusion has not delivered to us. Insecurity has not delivered to us. Lamentations have not delivered to us. But taking the right position, building the right institutions, holding ourselves accountable and intentionally accountable, and also intentionally being transparent is what yields transformation, and putting in place the right policies and also establishing the space to challenge those policies. And I thank so much the organizers of this dialogue, because that's what we've been doing throughout the 2.5 days. We have been challenging the status quo. We have challenged ourselves, but also we're challenging those that lead us. We're challenging how we intervene. And I hope that you leave Kigali intending to come back, but also intending to do something differently. Because if you don't, you will be graduating to insanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that excellent address and this excellent valedictory address. Over the past 2.5 days, I've been tasked with ushering all of you around from one venue to another. So I suppose it is only appropriate that I thank all of you for joining us at the Kigali Global Dialogue 2022. Excellencies, delegates, friends, we now come to a close to 2.5 days of excellent conferencing. I'm delighted that after 2 difficult years of the pandemic, we were able to reconvene in this beautiful city, and I remain hopeful that the worst is behind us and we can reconvene again next year. The conversations that took place at this year's dialogue reflect a new world we all must contend with. As much as we are tired of hearing about the pandemic and its various implications, just like the virus itself, we are unable to escape it. If the 20th century came to be defined with the phrase post-war, the 21st century will be associated with post-pandemic. And we don't even know if it is over yet. Across the many conversations that took place over the past few days, 3 distinct nodes stand out. The first, the need to invest in partnerships, not just between governments, but between communities and between people. If globalization was on life support pre-pandemic, the virus pulled the plug. We now have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to start afresh, to script a model of global integration that serves all of humanity by placing communities and people at its core. The second, the climate crisis must not be allowed to fall victim to PR, to the traditional definition of snazzy public relations and its new avatar, pandemic response. As highlighted by Excellency Husnu earlier today, developing countries such as Mauritius and even India are punching well above their weight when it comes to climate action. Against all odds, low incomes, weak state capacity, lack of technology, lack of finance, we are committed to preserving this planet. It is time the developed world and historic polluters step up. The time to pontificate is over. To paraphrase Jerry Maguire, the demand from the developing world is simply, show us the money. The third, the decade of action must reconcile 2 approaches. First, all hands on deck. and the second are targeted and focused interventions. 20% of this decade has already been lost to the pandemic. The war in Europe today is not helping. Inflation, food insecurity, a global economic crisis are just some of the topics we covered over the last few days. 17 goals and 160-odd targets look great on paper, but it is now time to implement and implement effectively, efficiently, keeping in mind the values of inclusion, equity, and sustainability. As we close this dialogue, I would like to thank our co-hosts, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Rwanda, and the Rwanda Convention Bureau for welcoming us back. Honorable Minister Biruta and Team Minafed, thank you. Thank you so much for your hospitality, your warmth, and your encouragement. Team RCB, Nelly, Frank, Christian, Valence, Magnificent, this dialogue would not be possible without your support, guidance, and backing. Thank you. A thank you to our partners who continue to invest and support in this forum and believe in the Kigali Global Dialogue vision, which is to have global conversations in the heart of Africa. Our common futures rest on the progress and prosperity of the people of this continent. My colleagues at ORF and ORF America, a group of fantastic professionals I'm proud to work with. Terry, the co-chair, who really designed and curated these conversations and this entire dialogue. Mannat, the driving force and energy of the team. The troika of Anahita, Noyantara, and Sankalita, who worked tirelessly to take these conversations beyond this room and online. Anoop, Suyash, and Asad, who kept us well fed, who took care of us. Tanobi for keeping the team in check, in line, and discipline. The team back in New Delhi, Amir, Rahil, Sanjay, Komal, who have been working on the Kigali time zone to get the aesthetics right. And of course, Samir, our president, the captain of this ship. But most of all, this dialogue would not have been possible without your love, support, and commitment. Our delegates who have come from far and near to debate, discuss, challenge, and identify solutions to some of the most critical issues in the global development landscape. On behalf of the team, I wish you a safe journey back and hope to see you very soon at the next edition of the dialogue. Good evening, and please do join us for dinner to celebrate one more successful edition of the Kigali Global Dialogue. Thank you.